Hello and welcome to Dakota Boys Talk Comics.
What, Steven? That's not...
Actually, this is a graphic novel.
Oh, Steven, why'd you have to go there?
Well, push my glasses up.
Oh man, but you know what? Wait, am I a nerd? I was just going to defend that not just nerds read comics, because I do. Uh-oh. Whatever.
You better go drink some beer and shoot a shotgun, man.
Oh, man.
You're getting a little weak here.
I thought that after I hit the deer on the way here and got out and still punched it in the face, that would make me enough of a man, but oh man. Well, yes, but tonight we are going to talk a comic, kind of change it up a little bit. But I think that by talking about comics, in a way, we're still talking about movies, because let's look at what's dominating the box office for the past 10 years. Comic book movies.
Yeah, it's... Sorry, for a brief second there, the movie Avatar jumped in my
Dakota
mind.
just started to have a stroke.
And I was like...
we were paused longer than you realized. I actually was down next to him screaming into his ear, crying for a while, but he's fine again, so...
Oh, thank God.
Sorry, you're saying, Avatar?
Oh, nothing. I think that and Disney movies have kind of just been like the big winners probably in the last 10 years.
Which now Avatar's a Disney movie. I guess.
Yeah, but comics.
Yeah. We're going to just, every once in a while, because Dakota and I are comic book readers also, just kind of throw in a comic we both read, talk about it a little bit, and then maybe we still will get into some movie stuff with it. But on this episode, we're going to focus on Three Jokers, which came out...
Which three?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we're going to... which just came out, what, last year?
Yeah.
Or 20, I think it was just a last year comic, or 2019 maybe. It was pretty recent. It must have been 2020.
Yeah. It relatively came out. I read it and suggested it to you, and bam, here we are.
Here we are, yeah. Because I had been, before this, reading the Earth Ones, specifically Superman and Batman Earth Ones, and been enjoying them, and then a few others mixed in there too. But this was one Dakota brought up and intrigued me, and I read it, and we thought this would be a good place to start because of, again, we'll talk about some implications and ideas we have for it. But let's just kind of get into this. So, Dakota, why don't you just kind of break down why it's called Three Jokers, what that means for people out there who maybe... Because as big as comic book stuff is, I feel like the symbols on T-shirts and the movies are bigger than... I would imagine there's probably a lot of people that don't even know the Three Jokers is a thing. The books aren't quite as known.
Yeah, which is crazy because I'm gonna come clean here. Some of you guys might know this from our previous podcast. Been a huge fan of DC Comics for a very long time now, few decades almost. And for a while there, the last few years, I kind of just gave up on reading comics altogether. Yes, I used to read Marvel. I grew up in the 90s. X-Men was like the greatest comic of all time during that period. I used to go out and just, I loved it. Each issue was like a feast for the eyes. So I don't just have love for DC. I have love for Marvel. Of course, when we were young, like Spawn was like the forbidden fruit.
And then it became a show that became the forbidden fruit.
Oh, man. But yeah. So I had kind of given up on comics altogether. And I was like, man, that time period when Jeff Johns was cranking out Green Lantern stories, that for me, that was the high point. Sinestro Corps War, boom, hands down. Most epic comic of all time. If you haven't read it, what are you doing with your life? Get out there and read it. It's got all the cool stuff.
What year did that come out?
Oh, good Lord.
Like 90s?
Oh, that was mid to late 2000s. I want to say 2005, 2006.
Oh, okay.
So But yeah, so I had kind of not necessarily stopped liking comics. I had just kind of stopped caring about them. Jeff Johns was still doing stuff here and there. I really didn't care. Mark Miller, of course, also one of my favorite writers. But yeah, the love was just not there. And then recently, up until a little over a year ago, I started getting back in because they've been killing it again. Started with Dark Knight's Metal. And then there was the Doomsday Clock comic, which was kind of a sequel to Watchmen, which great, by the way.
That took 8 years to finish.
Yeah. Actually, you could argue almost 30.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
That's true.
the original Watchmen came out in 85.
Yeah.
I think.
Which Doomsday Clock, for those you don't know, it's a sequel. Is it a full-on
Oh, yeah.
sequel?
It is
I didn't
a-
know because it ends up tying in DC characters, like if they consider it still like a sequel of sorts. But
Yeah, it's the Watchmen characters kind of come into the DC Comics reality. And this is actually kind of has that storyline has a little bit of tie to this because there comes a moment in the comics where Batman has access to the Mobius chair, and this is a chair that supposedly has all the knowledge. Like if you ask the chair who shot Kennedy, would tell you whoever did that. I'm not gonna say it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. 90% probably was.
it would clarify it for the people who still hold to conspiracies, I guess.
Yeah.
if it wouldn't have been. Yeah.
If you ask the chair, does pineapple belong in pizza? The chair would be like, hell no.
And I'm with you on that one. I
But-
know some people very close to me that would not agree with that. But yeah. Yes, and that's kind of where the origin of what this comic book we're talking about on this episode kind of originated, right? Was Batman in this Mobius chair?
Yes, he asked the chair what the Joker's name was, and the chair just replied 3. And for a while there, everyone was like, what does that mean? Like, does he have 3 names? Is there 3 different Jokers? And in this comic, it is actually they did it a little different than how I expected it to be. These were kind of Jokers. They all did resemble each other, but they had their own personality tics and different ways of thinking.
There was 2 of them specifically that it took me a while to kind of get my bearings on which one was which at different points early on until you do kind of get a little more of a feel for their like the personality differences, because the one always stays a little more serious and then the other 2 are more that classic Joker look all the time, which you had to kind of pay attention to the story a little bit just to make sure you know who was who.
But they're dubbed the Clown,
The criminal,
and
the comedian.
yeah. So the 3 C's.
The 3 C's.
But in this story, it kind of they all kind of band together and they're like, all right, it's time to spring the trap. They have kind of a plan.
There's a plan that you kind of have. You get this vague sense of it where they're basically trying to create the penultimate Joker, I guess you could say, is kind of the plan they have.
Which is in a way kind of a wacky Joker plan, like the Man Who Laughs storyline, where it's like he tries to trademark the smiling fish, and everyone's like, "You're insane," and then he just loses his mind.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, and so I guess yeah, that's kind of their plan, is to try to, but their way of kind of finding this penultimate Joker is to create this penultimate Joker. And that's kind of where that side of it is. And then the other side of that is, of course, you have a lot of Bat family drama.
Yeah, interestingly enough, they basically say in this movie, they don't come right out and spell it for you, but it's implied. Basically, if you take a bath in this chemicals, you'll become a Joker.
Yeah, which has been kind of dealt with in comics and even in the animated series. Was it in the animated series? that there was like this gas that would just contort your face and make you start laughing. God, was that in the animated series? Now I'm
Yeah, he had the Joker gas.
yeah. So it's kind of like that, but like a more extreme version. It's almost like I hate to bring this up, but if any of you have seen like the Suicide Squad movie from a few years back, or Harley Quinn, where it's like you just kind of get baptized into this chemical and you come out crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of a huge plot point in the Harley Quinn animated show too,
Yeah,
because she cures the Joker by dumping him in kind of a bath of chemicals, but it does the opposite effect of what it did to him originally.
yeah. Well, and then there's another comic I'd like to talk about as one of these episodes at some point called White Knight.
Ah,
And Batman shoves a pill down Joker's throat that kind of makes him normal to a degree. And so yeah, there's been like kind of back and forth on all of that. It's kind of like the Lazarus pit where there's like a lot of lore to how that works and what it does, which is another kind of Batman thing that usually comes into the picture when Ra's al Ghul's around.
yeah. What's interesting, one thing I'm just gonna throw out there. I was so surprised at how good the story was written.
Yeah. It's gripping. It really holds your attention.
The Endgame storyline, no, not the Marvel movie. There is a Batman storyline called Endgame, and it's kind of the end all be all for the Batman Joker saga in a way. And here's where I say DC's killing it right now, despite some other comics that are out there which shall go nameless right now. But I thought that was the high point. But this, we had so many high points in terms of what they did story wise with certain characters. There's kind of a minor subplot with Joe Chill,
Yeah.
which I thought was really touching and
I liked the way they handled Joe Chill in this. Yeah.
heartfelt. For those who don't know, Joe Chill's the guy that gunned down the Waynes.
Yeah, which you might like. I think a lot of people became familiar with him if you liked Batman Begins because you very much know his name and that they make a strong point in that movie of who he is and what he did and stuff. So that would be where probably a lot of people got to know that name more was from Batman Begins. But yeah, that is, and I really liked the arc of Barbara where you're introduced to her and she's just burning out treadmills because she's got herself just so like she's just so determinedly in shape and everything. And this is like after she's already been in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And so I mean there's a lot of good stuff with her in this too, and Jason Todd, Red Hood.
Yeah, kind of a huge fan of the character, but DC's kind of turned him into their version of the Punisher with his dual 45 pistols and, in an odd way, too, like going completely off topic, which is on brand at this point.
It's on brand.
Deathstroke is essentially like an evil Captain America in the DC universe. Because I don't know if you know this, but they gave him superpowers where it's not super speed like the Flash, but he has like incredibly fast reflexes to the point where he could kill like 20 men in 5 seconds, and he has a healing factor now.
Oh man! So maybe he's like Captain Wolverine.
Yeah, there's if you're a fan of Funko Pops or not, there's a great Funko Pop of both Red Hood and Deathstroke running at each other.
Oh, it's like one of their scenes. Huh?
Yeah, I highly suggest checking it out. I personally love it. Can't wait to get my hands on one myself. But just kind of something I want to ask you though. Did you notice when there's a part in the story where Batman goes to Joe Chill's cell to confront him, and it's implied he chokes up.
Chill?
No, Batman.
Oh, Batman?
Where he's like, think of how the Christian Bale Batman would, he walks in on a criminal. He probably wouldn't say anything. He'd probably just start smashing the dude's head in. But there's
yeah, and yelling really gravelly.
He tries to do the classic Batman, like, oh, I'm gonna lower my voice and intimidate this guy, but he chokes up a little bit. And I was like, oh man, is that?
Yeah.
I just thought it was
like the Batman Bruce, kind of his whole, there's like a huge tension and weight on him through this whole time because I think he is battling. That is like the point where he kind of breaks because the whole time he is so working so hard to not break. Like it's like kind of Batman's typical MO is that you never know what he's like, nobody around him ever knows what he's feeling. Like he could have the most surprised, he could open up a envelope and read the most surprised thing he's ever read, and Batman's face wouldn't change. Because that's what Batman does. Batman doesn't let you in on anything of what he's feeling. He would just go, I need to get back to the Batcave. Or, he would just like something like that. And yeah, and there are a few moments in this where you see that maybe like the Bruce Wayne side of Batman is like almost ripping through because he is having there is these strong emotions happening. Obviously, the one being the confrontation with Joe Chill and what's going on there. And then obviously the other one being the fact that him and Jason Todd are still working through the whole fact that Jason Todd wasn't dead when Bruce just assumed he was. And how Jason's dealing with that and then how Bruce is dealing with that is in two different ways, but they both think they're doing it the right way, but that's still complicated because the way they both bury their emotions is unhealthy for different reasons. And so, yeah, it makes it all very... And so you have, even within the people that are having to work together, there's so much tension, but not in a soap opera-y way, just in a typical Bat family fashion, really, on top of whatever this Joker stuff is. And it just makes it like a gripping read. I was shocked when it was only 3 issues, but they must have been 3 like slightly oversized issues.
Yeah, I think they were like 80, like the 80-page comics instead of like the 30.
Yeah, and so it still is maybe as big as a typical 6 to 7 issue story run. It's just that they did it in like larger chunks, and man, you just kind of want to keep going. You just kind of want to keep reading.
Yeah, it's Jeff Johns is a great writer. When he's working on comic books, apparently when he's working on movies and TV shows, it's
yeah. You've probably seen his name on a lot of things, especially if you just saw Wonder Woman 84. It was screenplay by Jeff Johns and the director Patty Jenkins, which I was shocked when I saw. I didn't realize that he had that much creative input on that movie to the point of doing the screenplay.
Yeah, on the smaller screen, he's also kind of the showrunner of that Stargirl show that's on the CW.
I forgot. Is he the showrunner? Because I forgot he's kind of... I knew he was like one of the creative heads.
Yeah, he's actually the guy that created that version of Stargirl. So,
oh, well, that would make sense then.
Yeah. But yeah, in a way, this is a sequel to The Killing Joke, because with Barbara Gordon, she's still kind of trying to pick up the pieces from that. A Death in the Family storyline, and vis-a-vis the Red Hood storyline.
Yeah. Because kind of these 3 Jokers are kind of... What they did was just they're like, oh, over the years of comics, this is the writers now on the outside of this world. There's has been 3... there's been more than 3 distinctive Jokers, but 3 famous... The 3 famous distinct Jokers. You have kind of the original one, and then the one that kind of came along, and I suppose like what they called the Silver Age, and then you have the Killing Joker. And I feel like that's kind of what these 3 Jokers are, kind of that original Silver Age and then Killing Joke. And then I guess fit in maybe that Endgame 52 one in there somewhere with one of them if you want to. I kind of did feel like they had to let that one go just because he's so distinctive with like his skin face and stuff that you could kind of make it one of these Jokers, I guess. And that's what I think was smart about this too, is that everything is familiar enough where you can kind of fit it into the canon however you want to, or they made it distinct. They made it recognizable enough where you understood who these Jokers were and where they fit in and why there were these emotions from the Jokers and from the Bat family. And at the same time, they're kind of slightly vague enough where it kind of like works into the canon, maybe however you can make it work into the
Yeah.
canon without having to overthink it and being like, you screwed up the whole timeline or something. And so I think that was smartly done too. And the fact that maybe they did just kind of ignore a little bit that New 52 kind of one, because that would have been kind of hard to kind of work that in, because the whole masochist type thing.
Yeah.
Because one of these is kind of a little bit of a sadist, but not so much a masochist.
Yeah. And kind of the reason we're talking about this is because Jared Leto has decided, even though nobody liked his version of Joker, he's like, maybe I'm not ready to give up yet.
Well, and apparently Scott Snyder was okay with that too, because he's back
Yeah.
in this Justice League movie in some capacity. I guess we don't know. It could just be a 5-minute scene for all we know.
Yeah. So interestingly, we have Joaquin Phoenix currently as maybe might be in a sequel. Maybe.
They were adamant it was a one-off, but then at the same time, everybody seems to be like about if he would come back or not.
Yeah, and then of course Warner Brothers absolutely wants a sequel made. I mean, it made over $1 billion
Yeah,
without the help of China.
yeah.
And of course, the Robert Pattinson Batman his movies will eventually have a Joker in it.
Probably. I mean, we know this first one is for sure going to be Riddler. You know, the villain will be, it'll be more Riddler centric. It seems like.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so yeah, Dakota was just bringing up how there's a possibility that with kind of the movies that they've done, that this Three Joker storyline, or at least a version of it, could be a possibility in the movie world now. How do you feel about that, Dakota?
I'd actually be pretty excited. I know Jared Leto is kind of a little still upset about the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, because he felt like he was kind of not necessarily getting stepped on, but overlooked.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because I think he probably wanted his own kind of movie.
Yeah, they promised him his own, and then he was supposed to be in a Batman movie, and then there were supposed to be so many movies with his Joker in it. I don't even think we'll really get another Harley Quinn movie after Birds of Prey, honestly. Maybe down the road. Things pick up, maybe. But, yeah, I'm actually kind of excited, and I'm not saying I would want say hypothetically, Walton Goggins gets hired as the Joker for Robert Pattinson's Batman movie. But I do think it'd be great if you had maybe say use Ben Affleck's Batman, since he's a little older and he's been around for a while, and try to adapt this story where he comes to the realization that there's 3 Jokers running around the world, just kind of causing mayhem, and that he was unaware of it for the longest time. I think
Part of me, though, because I know when we were talking about this and then you kind of were encouraging me to read it, was you said, I feel like this is a good place to just kind of leave Joker because of, like the things it does, and just kind of take a breath for, like just breathe for a while without Joker. Was that including the movies? Because now you're talking about using this in a movie, and I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, do you want the movies to maybe take a breather from Joker too, though?
Oh, I'd actually, honestly, I think that would be good. It's kind of like Lex Luthor. Like, man, we've had so many Lex Luthors, but we haven't had a single Parasite or
Brainiac? I mean, they haven't done Brainiac in a movie. It'd be kind of interesting.
Or even something simple like Kryptonite Man, like something cheesy like that. They haven't even done.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You were taught. You just brought up Walton Goggins as Joker, but honestly, it's like he'd be an interesting like Mad Hatter. I mean, I just like, or if he were the Scarface's
Oh,
the ventriloquist for the Scarface dummy.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it'd be kind of interesting just to kind of play with some of those other ones you don't see as much that still kind of have interesting backs. And then, you know, if you put it in the hands of somebody like, you know, like Matt Reeves, who's doing this more recent Batman, like the reason I have an excitement for that is because I'm excited about what Matt Reeves is going to do with that world, you know, and what he's going to do with the Riddler, because I think he does like to play with those kind of like psychological thriller things a little bit. And so that's probably why maybe he wanted to do the Joker or the Riddler, excuse me. And yeah, and so I mean, it just could be interesting to see how he would play with ones like the Scarface dummy or Mad Hatter or some of those ones, you know, that maybe in our minds aren't quite as like mainstream but might work. It would be interesting to see how Clayface would work in a live action movie too, or one like that.
Yeah, one that was kind of ridiculous, I was thought, and then the Rocksteady Batman Arkham games turned into a just pure nightmare feel was Man Bat.
Oh, yeah, Man Bat. I liked kind of you know, he was the pilot episode of the animated series did Man Bat.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought that was an interesting just kind of story. I mean, in a 25-minute episode, it was an interesting kind of storyline what they did. And so, yeah, that would be another, yeah, because you could even get into, I mean, everybody knows how popular body horror is. You know, just getting into the idea that this guy is like contorts into like a Batman. Oh, no, excuse me, Man Bat. Do things like that. So, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of bad guys, you know, without even going back to the well of Joker and, you know, Bane and Poison Ivy or some of these ones that maybe kind of have left a bad taste in their mouth in the past, even with a few of them, you know, like a lot of people had a bad taste left in their mouth over Poison Ivy, you know, in the 90s, but maybe we'd be ready for a new version of that. I don't know. And, you know, I don't know. And maybe, you know, we've already done Catwoman a few times, so maybe leave that alone. And because there's other things we can kind of do and try. He's got a lot there. So, plus, you know, I feel like the other thing that's been missing in Batman movies is I feel like now is a good time to start up the Bat family again.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I know that those Forever Batman and Robin were like, I don't know, it was kind of like weird maybe or whatever. But the comics like do the Bat family in a not weird way most of the time. And so, I mean, I think there is a way to make that work in a movie too, where it isn't just awkward or weird or nipples, you know, or whatever it is, you know, that ends up happening in the past.
Yeah, I think should they try though, I think they'd probably definitely really have to work at it.
Yeah.
Oh man, why'd you have to bring up those terrible Batman movies?
Well, it kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's just
Well, you know, and obviously this first one, I think it's fine that it's just probably going to be Robert Pattinson's Batman or whatever. But I mean, I think it's time maybe to try the Bat family again and maybe work in what that's going to look like a little bit, where like maybe you start to introduce Barbara and then over the course of 2 movies she becomes Batgirl. I mean, it doesn't even have to be like in the same movie she's introduced she becomes that, because I feel like that's what always ends up happening in these movies. Like in the same movie that they're in, they become that. Whereas like, you know, like start it now where you can kind of build into that eventually because they're an established person, you know, in that world.
Yeah, Zack Snyder, of course, his Batman did have a Robin, apparently.
Well, he made his Batman already have everything, and it's like, boy, it would have been nice to see those things, but they're already in the past.
Well, because, you know, there was the Robin suit, which basically was like a modified version of his suit in the Batcave.
Yeah, with the laughs on it.
And everyone kind of thought that was a nod to Jason Todd. Unfortunately, one of the tombstones in his little graveyard behind his house, yeah. So there's that.
I was just looking because I was trying to remember when. Oh, I forgot that there is going to be Catwoman in the new Batman movie, isn't there?
Yeah.
Zoe Kravitz. And the Penguin. Man, I'm forgetting that there's going to be Penguin in that too. But see, I wonder if Penguin's going to be one where he's going to kind of be more of a behind-the-scenes player and they'll slowly do more with him. At least that first trailer just made it feel like it's going to be Riddler's movie.
Yeah.
But I was trying to remember when the Batman was coming out. I thought it was coming out this year. It doesn't come out till March of 2022.
Yeah, they pushed it back because of thanks to this whole thing with this virus.
Yeah.
Hey, on the plus side, at the end of the year we'll have Suicide Squad.
At the end of this year?
Yeah.
Cow. Kind of would rather have the Batman. But
kind of back to Three Jokers. What sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
didn't know where you're going with that.
Anyway, so why did I think this was the kind of Joker to end it on? I think, well, it did kind of go into the Joker from The Killing Joke, which gets kind of brought up, I think, way too often. I think there are other better Joker stories out there. But it did kind of not necessarily tie that up with a nice little bow, but I think it added to that story a little bit.
Yeah.
The whole kind of arc with Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon, I thought that was so well written. And what's interesting about this is the story is kind of, in a way, taking place outside of what's going on in the comics right now.
Yeah, it was definitely its own kind of contained world of events in a way.
Yeah, so in a way, it's a little more accessible to readers.
Yeah.
You don't have to know what's going on with the Joker War or whatever they're doing with Harley Quinn right now, because it seems like every few months they're trying something different with her.
Yeah, and isn't there some new one coming out that's called Harleen?
I think that came out.
Or is that already out? Where it's like, and because I just saw that one recently, and I'm like, man, they got another thing with her.
That actually seems like a really interesting story, though.
Well, see, that's the problem, though. That's why they keep making them, because then a lot of the time they know they're going to suck people in by going, well, that one does seem interesting.
Like it's at that point where it's like she's gonna, if they announce like, oh, her next storyline, she's gonna be a tattoo artist in Tijuana, like helping immigrants get across the border. I'm like, yep, that's pretty. It's pretty much what I come to expect to you. Just nonsense on top of more nonsense.
Actually, that sounds pretty woke.
Being a tattoo artist.
Well, in Tijuana, helping migrants, but I feel like that could be the next season of that animated show on DC Universe or HBO Max or whatever, where she would just be a tattoo artist. So, because they're doing more of those, right?
Oh, I hope so. I really enjoyed that second season.
Yeah, and then as far as this Batman world of what it could mean for things, I know there's a Gotham PD show coming out. Is that going to be its own world, or is that going to be tied like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where it's going to be kind of have certain ties?
You know, it's supposed to tie into the Batman. It's supposed to
really?
Yeah, it's supposed
Wow.
to take place, I think, either 2 years before the events of that film.
Okay.
And I think,
So maybe even a little bit of a pre-Batman show?
yeah, there was a comic called, I think it was, oh, man, this is embarrassing. I'm forgetting. But it did kind of focus on, it was almost more of like a Law and Order
Oh, okay.
type storyline where it focused on the police and less on Batman and
Sure.
the Joker and all that. And which I kind of always hoped that's what Gotham was instead of what Gotham kind of turned into.
Oh,
Which
man.
was,
Yeah, Gotham seemed like a show had a whole lot of potential that, in my opinion, not everybody's opinion, this is just my opinion, I want to make that clear, went downhill fast. I thought so. I know some people held on a little longer than I did, but I thought it was like, this isn't anything I thought it was going to be, and it just felt, it ended up being an annoying show, because I felt like they accelerated things to a point where the whole time you're just going, I just want Batman to come, because they kind of were focusing so much on all of this Batman stuff, but without Batman. And so, I don't know.
yeah, the show was all over the place, and it just felt so disjointed, and they were trying to do things, and
Yeah, and so I mean, I know actually that Pennyworth show went over pretty well.
Yeah, which I honestly thought that was a joke when they
Honestly,
announced
I
it.
kind of thought it was too. And I mean, I haven't heard things about how it was like one of the best shows ever made and is going to be up for Emmys or anything, but I heard that it was actually a pretty decent show. And so hopefully this Gotham PD show, and now that you say that, I am remembering because Matt Reeves, he's going to kind of work on that show too, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I guess it would make sense that it would tie in.
Maybe we'll see John Cena's the Peacemaker on that show
Yeah,
because
that's true. Could be.
he's getting his own show, oddly enough.
Well, it is John Cena. I mean, people like him. So I'm guessing Gotham PD is going to be on HBO Max.
I don't know if that's what they're calling it. It's just untitled Batman side project. Yeah, it's going to be on HBO Max because they don't have any original content right now. But a few years down the road, hey, it's going to be the place to be at.
Eventually, you're going to want it, people.
Just be patient.
Yeah, be patient. Just keep watching Wonder Woman 84 over and over again while you wait.
You know, it's interesting. They keep.
Actually, that's not going to be on there. Is it? They're taking it off, or did?
They did.
Yeah.
It's been.
Never mind.
It was only a month and it was gone.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? They keep. Warner Brothers makes a lot of good stuff, right? They don't just make. They don't just own DC Comics. You know they got other stuff going on.
One would argue they used to make a lot of good stuff, and now don't seem to make very much good stuff, except for every once in a while a DC movie.
I know what you're talking about, man. Rick and Morty is one of the greatest shows of all time, and that's still going.
Oh, you're talking about TV shows too? I mean, I guess.
We're all waiting with bated breath for the next terrible Fantastic Beasts movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. That's too bad.
Why are they still running with that title, by the way? Because that last one had
It should have maybe been called Fantastic Beasts. Where are they? Instead of where to find them. Like, we literally have lost them.
Oh, but just... Man, we just went a little far afield there.
Hey, on brand. That's what we're saying. People, welcome to On Brand for us. I bet some of you at this point don't even remember what this episode was about unless you look at our thumbnail picture.
It was about the great comic Three Jokers.
It is, and it is a great comic. And I think, yeah, maybe let's there we go. There's our comeback point. So out of 10 batarangs, how many batarangs did you give this?
9.5.
9.5. Okay, I think I am gonna go 8. So
8. That's a little low, man.
It is. It is a little low, but here's my little history lesson on myself. Now, I was more of I casually read some through the childhood, and then where I came back into comics was around 2011, and I picked up the first volume of Scott Snyder's New 52 Batman run.
Oh God, was that long ago?
Yeah, which was Court of Owls, I believe.
Great storyline.
Was that the first one, Court of Owls?
Yes.
And ate it up. Just ate it. Court of Owls, I think that should be in a movie. I think that's some good stuff there. And then I read that all the way through as they were coming. I caught myself up to where I had to wait a few months for the new one because I was kind of caught up.
Don't you hate that when you're... That was the problem with the Watchmen, the Doomsday
Clock. Well, it's easy to get caught up with that when it took them 3 months to put out each issue, but yeah, and then pretty much since there, I've just kind of kept accumulating more and more. I guess what I'm finding though is that, you were talking about reading more of the X-Men stuff in the 90s, and now you gravitated more to, and I feel like that's the thing. Like I've tried to read some of the more new Marvel stuff, and I struggle. And it's not necessarily always because it's bad. It's more just because I find them kind of a slog, and maybe I'm just finding the wrong ones where it's like they maybe just I just want to read like a really, I don't know. I think the reason I gravitate toward the Batman comics is because I just want to read a really good moving along kind of action thriller. Whereas I feel like some Marvel ones are telling me so much information about things, and then I don't know what's going on because I don't know the other 3 timelines. And then maybe there's some too much humor at times in some comics. I don't know. I struggle with some of that. So if anybody out there has any recommendations on some good newer Marvel stuff, I'd be more than willing.
Oh, new Marvel. You had to say that.
Well, I mean, because I've read some of the older stuff. What I'm getting at is when I've tried to read some of the newer stuff,
Yeah.
it's maybe just been the wrong stuff.
I hate to be that guy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to newer Marvel, you may have to dig.
Yeah.
I tried to get into.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's tough.
Yeah, I tried to get into the. I think they were calling it Marvel Zombies 3.
Like some of that.
Because I was a huge fan of the Ash vs. Evil Dead versus the Marvel Zombies. That was a great storyline, by the
okay.
way. And the zombie storyline in the first place, where, you find out the Reed Richards from the Ultimate Timeline is he somehow got in touch with a Reed Richards from an alternate dimension. You find out it's these zombies, and because they wiped their entire planet out. They ate everybody.
It happens.
But that was such a great storyline. And it's just, it was like, I just kind of gave up after a couple issues. It's like, I'm not into this. It's like, I feel like there was a spark and it was great for a second. And we should just enjoy that one spark.
Yeah, maybe.
Don't just keep trying to make the spark again.
I did enjoy, but I think this was even 2009, which is still newer. Spider-Man Noir.
Oh yeah,
that was a good kind of one-off story that I enjoyed. Kind of
was so good, actually inspired a video game.
Yeah, it was in that Shattered Dimensions video game. Was there another one where Noir was? Did he have his own game, or are you thinking of Shattered?
I think it might have been DLC for that Shattered.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, and then they most famously used him in a little bit of a more comedic way in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with Nick Cage as the voice. But in that comic, it's a little different or whatever. And so, yeah, that was... So, I mean, there are ones out there and stuff. And I read Marvel 1602, like the big story arc, because I know there was, like, shoot-offs of all the different groups, where it was, what if Iron Man... Or what if Tony Stark and Peter Parker and Reed Richards were all these people that lived in the 1600s and were sailing between Europe and the New World? And that was kind of some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, I honestly thought that story was a little disappointing.
It did end up being disappointing.
Yeah. Although Nick Fury was great.
Yeah.
I love the twist. The twist. We'll just go with the twist.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there are stuff in there. But yeah, if you have any recommendations out there, I'd be more than happy. But... And maybe some of these we'll kind of come back to, because that's what I was thinking. Like, it'd be nice to kind of alternate this between DC and Marvel, because there is good Marvel stuff out there.
So I'm probably opening up a box of worms here, but Love and Thunder isn't that far off.
That's true.
And I'd hate. This is why I say I hate to open up a can of worms. I feel like I'm opening up a can of worms, is because I know people that have read that and they were just like, "What is this garbage?"
The Lady Thor stuff?
Yeah, because it happened around that time when these mantles were getting passed on to other people. Like the Iron, that's when Ironheart happened, where you had
Oh, sure.
the young black lady was the new Iron Man, and
Mm-hmm.
there was that Spider-Woman comic, which the cover for just caused everyone to lose their minds.
The famous controversial cover, yes. Well, first off, let's just talk about the anatomy. It made no sense. Anyway, yeah, there. So that was right during that era when all that happened.
Yeah.
Huh? Interesting.
And I'm gonna throw this out there just because I found this out not too long ago. And I got kind of excited for it because, one, I was a fan of the comic, and I love the story because it took place it's supposed to in the area where I grew up. There was a comic called Scalped. I found out this movie is TV show. I may have to go back and check. Pretty sure it's a movie. They're adapting it, and the actress who was the voice of Pocahontas in the Disney movie, where John Smith was done, but the voice was done.
Oh
by Mel
yeah,
Gibson.
yeah. Sure. Yep.
Yeah. She's playing the main character's mom in that, and I was like, how is this happening? And no one told me.
Huh.
Because it takes place on a reservation around the Badlands. A fictionalized.
Is it Marvel?
No, this was it was under the imprint of Vertigo, which I'm told
Oh, Vertigo.
doesn't exist anymore, but it was owned by DC Comics,
Sure.
and it was darker. If anyone's ever seen Preacher, that was also under the Vertigo tagline, and I think Sandman was too. The Neil Gaiman comic.
Yeah, which is supposedly going to be made into something too, possibly.
Yeah.
But,
So it'd be interesting because that is a series kind of like The Boys. I stuck with it for years. From the beginning to the end, man, I was all in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there are some options out there that we'll have to look into and come back and revisit this, especially since some of these are possible, if not probable, storylines or adaptations they're using for movies or TV shows. So it'd be kind of interesting to go and kind of talk about that. So I think with that, though, we'll kind of end this before we rabbit trail again.
Once
So
again,
even though it was fun and it's on brand, yeah. So
once again, this was about 3 Jokers.
this is what, yeah. For those of you still holding on to your sanity, unlike most of the Jokers in this comic we read, this was about Batman 3 Jokers, which we both recommend. Because like we said, yeah, maybe you have to have a little bit of knowledge about understanding of who the Joker is and some of the things he's done in the past. But at the same time, you don't have to know everything. And so I think that helps it stay as a recommendation for those of you who are even kind of more like know the movie stuff maybe a little better. So with that, we'll close this out. Remember to subscribe and like us in all those places. We appreciate all that. Give us reviews.
Especially if you
Rate
think we
us.
suck. Let us know.
Yeah.
We encourage all sorts of feedback.
Well, Dakota, I will tell you, so far we don't suck according to iTunes because we're a 5-star podcast on there. And so
do I
you
do
know,
I dare ask of how many?
it's like 4.
Okay.
But it's 5-star. And if any of you lower that, you can, I'm just kidding. That's fine. Just put what you feel because we know what you feel is 5 stars. And so, but anyway, it's cool to see that there are some ratings on there and that's fun. And yeah, so thank you for listening to this, to Dakota Boys Talk Comics, which we will definitely be coming back to in the future. So this is Steven.
This is Dakota.
See you later.